The austere cacophony of the press room filled the air with its pulse, a rhythmic heartbeat of ink and print. Amidst this symphony of spoken stories and hurried hands, Benjamin Cray sat in brooding silence. Worn fingertips, stained with black ink, grazed the coarse paper before him. Unassuming, yet enticing, the report of peculiar thefts in Concord, North Carolina, lay printed in cold, indifferent letters. Benjamin was no stranger to peculiarity. His gaze, hardened by countless tales of human folly and cruelty, bore an unwavering persistence. Yet there was a warmth in his timbre, a generosity born from knowing what it was to have nothing. His early years, clawing through the grit and grime of impoverishment, had not hardened his heart, but fueled his empathy. The newsroom's frenetic energy echoed around him, a far cry from the desperate silence of his childhood. Each story bringing him further from the past, promising the financial windfall that ensured his security. Another wild goose chase, Cray? The voice shattered his introspection. Howard, his colleague, perched on the edge of the desk, grinning like a Cheshire cat. "No wilder than the last, Howie," he replied, eyes not leaving the paper. His voice was like gravel, rough around the edges but sturdy. Howard chuckled, his jowls quivering. "I'll never understand your penchant for these god-forsaken stories, Ben. In the middle of nowhere, no less." "The story is where you find it," Benjamin retorted, the corner of his mouth lifting in a smirk. Unbeknownst to him, this tale was far from ordinary. The thefts held a chillingly peculiar trait, their strange markings etched into each stolen item. They were not symbols of earthly understanding, but a chilling script that seemed to hum with an ancient rhythm, a language unbound by time. Days later, under the scorching North Carolinian sun, he found himself standing in the heart of Concord. The town, quaint yet eerily silent, whispered tales of ordinary lives tangled in unordinary events. The police station, painted in faded blue, bore the weight of the citizens' trust and suspicion alike. "Mr. Cray," greeted Officer Nichols, a burly man with eyes that held decades of law and order. "I must say we've never had the press interested in our little corner of the world." Benjamin merely smiled, offering a courteous nod. The dance of question and answer began, threading the thin line of curiosity and accusation. As he walked the sleepily buzzing streets of Concord, past white picket fences and red brick houses, the first whispers of unease began to creep into his bones. The mundane had birthed the bizarre, and he was caught in its tangled web, a protagonist unaware of the cosmic tale that had chosen him. In this slumbering town, under the watchful gaze of the stoic police station, the line between reality and the unfathomable was beginning to fray. Shadows grew longer, whispers grew louder, and Benjamin Cray was stepping closer to the door between worlds, drawn in by his relentless pursuit of the truth. Concord was a town of murmurs, the kind that rolled off porches and slipped down the shadowy alleyways, sinking into the skin of its people. A kaleidoscope of everyday life played out under the watchful gaze of a sun that bore no witness to the impending strangeness. For Benjamin Cray, it was as if he were a moth drawn toward an unspoken, alluring flame. His investigative tango took him through the town's heart and into its veins, trailing the echo of the strange thefts. He traced the paths of the missing items, a worn locket from a mother's drawer, an antique pocket watch from a lonely widower's mantle, an heirloom dinner plate from the town mayor's display case. Each piece as mundane as the next, their worth resting solely on their peculiar markings, inscriptions that teased at ancient understandings and a mystery that only deepened. There was the sullen grocer, Mr. Jenkins, who poured forth his tale of the stolen silverware, his eyes flickering with the strangeness of it. "Can't make heads or tails of it, Mr. Cray," he grumbled, his weathered fingers tracing the eerily identical symbol he had found etched into his wooden counter. Or the austere school teacher, Miss Abigail, who confessed to losing her grandmother's mirror. Her voice was soft, tremulous as she spoke of the same eerie marking carved into her classroom's chalkboard. "It's as if we're being toyed with, Mr. Cray," she whispered, her knuckles white as she clutched her worn-out cardigan. Throughout his exploration, Benjamin noticed an undercurrent of unease, an insidious dread snaking through the town, creeping beneath the banal veneer of Concord's life. His persistence led him to the town's aged library, a mausoleum of forgotten stories and hidden knowledge. Behind the counter stood the lean, hawk-eyed librarian, Miss Eleanor, who prided herself on being the town's silent observer. Seeing the symbols he had been collecting, she paused. "Why, these are like those old symbols I've seen in some of our rare books, Mr. Cray." Her voice, hushed, carried an undercurrent of fear. Guided by her frail hands and lit by the warm glow of a desk lamp, Benjamin found himself diving deep into the annals of antiquity. Each page whispered tales of forgotten epochs, places where humanity's understanding lost its footing. The symbols, it seemed, were whispers from these lost eras, foretelling the opening of doors, the presence of shadows, the hint of other realms. As the moon replaced the sun, his refuge within the library evolved into a fortress of curiosity, battered by the waves of an ancient, unseen tide. The hum of Concord nightlife faded to a low drone outside the dusty windows, as a quiet dread began to unfurl its cold fingers around the town. Leaving the library, he felt the weight of the night. He walked under the mute stare of the moon, Concord's quaint houses now shrouded in a ballet of shadow and light. The wind, cooler now, whispered tales of otherworldly doors. Doors that he would soon find himself standing before. Back in his motel room, he glanced at his notes, the cryptic symbols almost glowing in the low light. He did not sleep. He sat, contemplating the doors he would soon open. Unknowing of what lay behind them, he was on the precipice of a cosmic discovery, drawn in by the enigmatic symphony of the ineffable script. The dawn painted Concord in hues of somnolent reality, as if the town was in respite from the creeping dread that slithered beneath its sunlit facade. But for Benjamin Cray, sleep remained a distant memory. His room was filled with the scent of strong coffee and the hushed rustle of paper. His mind teetering on the brink of a revelation shrouded in cosmic mystery. Despite the glaring sunshine, the shadows clung to the corners of Concord, whispering secrets that resonated with the strange script he had unearthed. His footfalls echoed down the quaint main street, each step a proclamation of his relentless pursuit. His destination, the unassuming blue edifice of the Concord Police Station, a place as mired in mundanity as it was in mystery. Officer Nichols greeted him with a wary nod, his gaze sharp and his mouth a tight line. His office bore the solemnity of countless testimonies and confessions, its walls whispering hushed stories of order and transgressions. His revelations, however, would be far from ordinary. The conversation started as a trickle, a harmless rivulet of curiosity, before swelling into a torrent of strange assertions and disturbing implications. Nichols's features turned from skepticism to disbelief, then to an unsettling fascination. The small evidence room, usually home to mundane transgressions, was transformed into the surreal epicenter of their shared enigma. The stolen items sat in shadowed corners, their strange markings glinting under the cold fluorescence. The symbols etched into the room's walls, pulsating with an unseen energy, seemed to defy the room's claustrophobic reality, hinting at the presence of a door, a passage to another realm. And then it happened. The room flickered, reality itself wavering like the surface of a disturbed pond. The air grew dense and the markings on the wall glowed with a spectral radiance. Benjamin, as persistent as ever, approached the shimmering glyphs. His heart pounded in rhythm with the pulsating symbols. His breath hitched in his throat. The chill of the unknowable, coursed through his veins. Stepping closer, he crossed the threshold. The world twisted and contorted, folding upon itself until he was elsewhere. Or rather, elsewhen. The other realm was an onslaught of inconceivable stimuli. Landscapes warped under a sky teeming with unnameable colors. Gravity was a mere echo of its earthbound counterpart. Forms of impossible geometry and eldritch creatures defied human comprehension. Their forms an amalgamation of horror and wonder. In the heart of this nightmare, amidst the raw essence of cosmic horror, he found an uncanny sense of kinship. His perception expanded, human constraints dissipating like smoke under the realm's uncanny radiance. Fear intertwined with awe, and the slow realization dawned that his life was now part of a grander, more terrifying narrative. Returning to the familiar confines of the evidence room, the unseen door sealing behind him, he was a man transformed. His eyes, once alight with human curiosity, now glowed with otherworldly understanding. The stolen items, the symbols, the door, they were part of something ancient, something beyond humanity's reach. His heart pounding in his chest, his mind teetering on the brink of a vast cosmic chasm, he knew he was standing on the precipice of an abyss that gazed back into him. The doors between worlds were no longer mere conjecture. They were a horrifying reality, and he, the erstwhile journalist, was now the unwitting key. Unseen shadows lurked at the edge of his perception, a sinister reminder of the consuming dark that awaited him. As night fell over Concord, it was as though the world held its breath. The nocturnal symphony of crickets and rustling leaves was subdued, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed against the town like a heavy unseen fog. Benjamin Cray, standing in the threshold of his motel room, looked upon the moonlit tranquility. His gaze was distant, his thoughts lost in the roiling abyss of the otherworldly realm he had glimpsed. His room, once a place of solace, was now filled with the pulsating rhythm of cosmic horror. The symbols scattered across his notes seemed to move of their own accord, their cryptic dance spelling out an ancient tale of doorways and darkness. The thefts, the symbols, the doorways, all led to a revelation that shook him to his core. His world was no longer his own. It was intertwined with an ancient cosmic tapestry that reached out into the fathomless depths of reality. The fear that gnawed at his sanity was tempered by a twisted sense of belonging. He was part of something grand, a tiny cog in the vast machinery of cosmic horror. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on his door. A figure stood at the threshold, silhouetted against the dim glow of the motel's flickering neon sign. Officer Nichols looked upon him, his stern features softened by the weight of shared revelation. They sat in silence, the room suffused with an unspoken understanding. Their world had changed. Beneath their feet, under the veneer of their reality, lay a shadowy expanse of unimaginable horror. "We can't go back, can we?" Nichols finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. His eyes were haunted, reflecting a truth too colossal to grasp fully. "No!" Benjamin responded, his voice bearing the weight of cosmic knowledge. "We can't." Their conversation flowed into the night, a desperate attempt to make sense of the senseless. But the specter of the consuming dark hung above them, a constant reminder of the ancient power they had unwittingly awakened. By the time the first rays of dawn painted the horizon, a decision had been reached. Concord, their mundane world, was but a droplet in the cosmic ocean. They would face the dark, not as individuals lost in the labyrinth of cosmic horror, but as a united front against the ancient shadows that lurked beyond the doorways. With Nichols at his side, Benjamin stood at the threshold of the unseen door once more. The symbols pulsed with a dark energy, a beckoning call from the other realm. The unseen door shimmered into existence, its edges flickering with the force of unspeakable power. Stepping through, they entered the other realm, a world shaped by the fevered dreams of nameless horrors. Benjamin looked upon the swirling colors and impossible geometry with an understanding born from his recurring journey into this world. Once a journalist, he was now a pilgrim in a land beyond human understanding. The past trauma of poverty and the allure of financial gain seemed trivial compared to the vast cosmic landscape that sprawled before him. His journey ended not in terror, but in acceptance. He walked hand in hand with the cosmic horror into the heart of the consuming dark. The final echo of Benjamin Cray's tale was not a desperate scream, but a whispered acceptance of his role in the grand tapestry of the universe. The story ended as it began, with a door, an unspoken understanding, and the weight of ancient shadows. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like it and subscribe to our channel where you can find more similar stories, and click on the bell icon to never miss one. There is plenty more cosmic horror to come from the Eldritch Tales Factory. Stay tuned, and until next time.